What's up, guys? Right now we are in the middle of the biggest poker series of the entire year, which means we're going to be playing a lot of tournaments. But I just got a text getting an invite to play 100-200 at the Venetian right now, and I don't think I can say no to that. So, you know, I've got $60,000 on me, gonna splash around, gonna get back to competing, but I'm very rusty, so I actually just played on Club WPT Gold earlier today.
Come on. Yes, he snap calls. Oh my goodness, we just win a $1,700 pot right off the bat.
It's America's newest online poker platform. You can play from 46 states, and we've got a massive $100,000 free roll every single quarter. The first one will be on September 20th. So you want to hop in, go on clubwptgold.com, make an account, and sign up with code Rampage, and you are officially invited to play in the first $100,000 free roll. That's going to happen every single quarter for hopefully forever, I guess. On top of that, if you haven't made an account yet, first-time purchasers will get 20 free sweep coins to go along with their $20 minimum purchase. So get involved, hop in. I'm giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars for the foreseeable future, and you can use code Rampage to sign up. But here we go. I just played on the site. I got some of the rust off, got acclimated to the cash game settings. It's very different from playing tournaments. And we're gonna head over to the Venetian right now. And let's get started with some cash games. Off to the Vegas Strip we go. And I can't wait to see who wins the $100,000 free roll that I'll be hosting every single quarter. Like I said, September 20th, mark your calendars. That's when the first one's gonna happen. And it's gonna happen every single quarter. So use code Rampage at sign up, and let's win in some cash games. I brought $60,000 with me here to play 100-200 at the Venetian. So I'm gonna buy in for half of what I brought, starting off with $30,000, and we are in the mix right off the bat when the cutoff raises to 600, and I've got 10-8 of diamonds in the small blind. Starting off with a spicy 3-bet of 2,500, my opponent makes the call with about 25,000 in his stack. And when the flop comes Queen, Queen, 9 rainbow, you already know with 10-8 of diamonds, I'm going to be bumping it up. I start off with a bet of 1,500 with a board that should favor me a little bit, and my opponent ends up making the call. When the turn comes a king, this is not my time to slow down. I'm representing strong hands like a queen, maybe even pocket kings. I'm firing out $5,000 with no attempt at stopping. When my opponent makes the call, it's a little bit scary, but you already know the drill. My mind was set already on this flop and turn. So when the river comes a 4, it wasn't the jack that I wanted to see, but here we go. I take my time, pretend like I have a decision to make, and right off the bat, I'm all in for $21,000, and my opponent has not folded yet. This is super intense. Literally like 5 minutes of sitting down to a really large game here. I'm all in for all of my chips that I put on the table, all $30,000 of it. And my opponent goes in the tank, and as each second passes, I'm getting more and more nervous that my opponent might make the call. And at the end of the day, he reluctantly slides his cards into the muck for a fold. Much needed bluff to get through to start off this session. And here we go. Starting off with a massive bluff, getting it through really gets the heart pumping. In the next hand with 6-7 of hearts in the big blind, the button raises to 600. And here when the small blind folds, you know what to do. I'm 3-betting to 3,000, bumping up with a very disguised suited connector, and my opponent comes along for a call yet again. In the flop here now, ace-ace-5 is definitely the board that I was representing with a large 3-bet. So I start off with a small bet once again to $1,200, hoping my opponent can just release his cards, but comes along for a call. The turn 9 of diamonds brings in the exact card I needed to continue firing. Now with a very disguised straight draw, it would be really cool to hit that 8, and here I'm telling the story of having a strong hand. I bet $5,000, setting up for a $10,000 all in, but my opponent once again folds. So back to back, getting really big bluffs through and chipping up really nicely. Once again, finding myself in the blinds, the cutoff raises to 600, and with pocket 9s in the small blind, I raise it up again to 2,500. Really playing a lot of big 3-bet pots from out of position, and when my opponent makes the call, once again, we're gonna have to navigate a tricky one, but at least I finally have a good hand this time. The flop comes King Jack 7, not exactly what I'm looking for. 2 cards over my pair. I definitely don't see merit into blasting off like I did the first 2 hands. I check this one, and my opponent checks it back. Turn comes the deuce of clubs, So now there's 2 flush draws on the board. And once again, I don't see any reason to be betting. And when my opponent fires out $3,000, I don't think I'm going to be continuing here. Very expensive hand as I fold and lose $2,500, but at least I'm still profitable on the day. That is until we have a $400 straddle on. The blinds are 100, 200, 400, and I've got ace deuce of clubs in the cutoff. I raise it up to $1,000, and a very active opponent at my left on the button 3-bets me to $3,500. Here, my opponent plays about $20,000 effective, and knowing how crazy my opponent is capable of being, I thought my hand would actually be the perfect candidate to put in a 4-bet bluff. Do I really want to bluff off my opponent? I'm going to try by 4-betting and raising it up to $8,000, and my opponent insta goes all in. Yeah, he goes all in for $20,000, and I'm snap out of there. So suddenly, with some foolish decisions and a very, very confident raise, I'm down on the game. Very self-inflicted wound and an expensive one at that, as I torch off $8,000. And another hand happens where I'm on the $400 straddle, making the game way bigger, and the cutoff raises to $1,200. 2 opponents make the call, and I peel ace-10 offsuit. I don't think my hand is actually that great of a call, considering we're going to be calling out of position, and ace-10 off is like whatever. And anyways, I don't really feel that great about ace-10 offsuit, but I do think it has some good properties for a 3-bet bluff. You can see I'm not slowing down at all this session, and I squeezed a $6,000, and the cutoff goes all in once again. The same opponent from last hand to my left. He looks like he has a soul read on me, and everyone folds, of course. I can't call his all in, and he shows me ace jack. It was actually one of those hands that I wanted to get to fold, but now, just like that, in back-to-back hands, I very quickly just decimated $14,000, and I'm buried. After 2 dumb hands, the straddle being on makes the game way bigger, and I guess it also made me go a little crazy. But we're going to tame things down a little bit. No straddle on in this hand, and I'm in the big blind with Jack 9 of diamonds. The hijack raises to 1,000, the button makes the call, and I've got not a raising hand, a calling hand finally. We're going to see some flops as the flop comes 8, 6, 5, 2 diamonds. That's right, I've got the combo draw and a pretty sweet board for me to lead out for $2,000 into the field. The hijack, the original raiser, makes the call, and we're off to a turn, which comes the 10 of spades. 2 flush draws on the board, and suddenly I have turned an open-ended straight draw along with my flush draw. I take my time to figure out what I want to do, and ultimately I'm going to fire out a large bet of $10,500. And now my opponent in the tank, I need him to fold, but also really okay if he continues because I'm going to be all in and I have a lot of equity anyways. But my opponent goes all in himself for about $30,000. I snap call it off. And here we go, suddenly a $67,000 pot brewing, and I've just got jack high, but a hell of a lot of outs. I think I have like half the deck that I need to hit to win this board. My opponent shows 8-6 for 2 pair. We'd agree to run it 2 times since the pot is so big. The first one, queen. That gives me the nuts straight. Second one, can we find a diamond? It's an 8, giving my opponent a full house and a very anticlimactic way to chop this pot up. I'll be honest with you, I always prefer to run it 1 time, but I'm always very happy to agree with whatever my opponent wants to do. And in this case, he really wanted to go 2 times. So we mitigate some variance, we chop up the pot so there's no blood, but man, another heart-racing pot here. Nearly $70,000 in the middle that we could have won had a diamond come on the second river. I've noticed about 60% of you guys watching this video aren't even subscribed. So if you want to make a deal, I promise I will not punt off my net worth in the next couple hands as long as you just tap that subscribe button. Thank you. Action is going crazy. With the $400 straddle on once again, I decide to raise Jack 5 of spades to $1,500. I get everyone to fold back to the straddle, who's actually JRB in this session, and he makes the call. So we got over $3,000 in the middle, and I've got a very suspect hand, but the flop comes 9-7 deuce, 2 diamonds. My opponent checks it over to me here, and I'm sitting with literal 2 napkins in my hand, it seems like. I decide to throw out a bet of $2,000, and here my opponent decides to make the call and stick around for a bit. The turn jack actually makes me feel really good about my hand. Very disguised top pair, although not the best one obviously. But when my opponent checks once again, I think my hand's good enough to bet for value. You know, I've been putting a lot of chips in the middle when I don't have anything with top pair. I think it's good enough to bet 6,000. And my opponent once again comes along for a call. So we got another big pot brewing. And now the river deuce pairs the board. And once again, my opponent checks. At this point, I think my opponent very likely can have like a 9 or a 7, one of those pairs. And maybe my opponent can think I'm really getting crazy here. And I decide to blast off $15,000 into the middle. Now, this is a massive bet, and I really am trying to target a 9 here in the spot, and my opponent looks like he is in some agony. So the more my opponent is in the tank and thinking about his decision, the more I want him to call.
They have good table.
I don't know, dude. Okay, I call it.
I have a jack.
I have a better jack.
He has ace jack. I mean, I really didn't think my opponent was going to float me with a random jack here. And to find that on the turn and really value own myself in a massive pot, this feels really, really bad. Losing another massive pot here. And at this stage of the cash game, the table actually announces that they're going to take a quick break right after the next hand. So I'm on mega tilt. How can we possibly take a break after I just lost this monster pot? I've got a few chips in front of me, and I look down at King 9 offsuit. With not a whole lot left in my stack, I just decided to go all in. I mean, the game's playing crazy, the straddle is on, there's a big ante in the game as well, so how bad could it really be to shove King 9 offsuit? Well, Ace Queen ends up making the call, so it's almost feeling like a tournament here, but just for like a $25,000 pot. And my King High, unfortunately, comes unimproved, and there we go. King High's gonna lose. Ace Queen wins, I get stacked here, and suddenly I just lose my entire $60,000 that I brought. But the game is just so good, I literally cannot fathom walking away from the table right now. So when the table takes a quick break, I'm still here, leaving me with no other option.
Can you give me 50, Brian?
Sure. Good luck, buddy.
Thank you.
I asked to borrow $50,000 from the host, Brian Oken. So that's right, here I am. I'm about to play 100-200 with $50,000 of someone else's money, the host no less. And it's do or die time. There's no time to waste as we're thrown right into the next spot. I'm in the big blind. There's a cutoff limps in for 200. The button raises to 2,000, and why not just do some gamble? I make the call here for $2,000 with 5-6 offsuit. My opponent folds, but I get rewarded with a freaking beautiful flop of 7-4-3. If you want to count that out in your hand, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's 5 in a row, giving me the flopped straight. I check to my opponent, and he fires out $2,000. And look, I am buried in this game. I need to get all the chips in the middle right here, right now. I check raise to $7,000. And my opponent does not fold. He's seen how crazy I've been today, and he's definitely in the mix making the call. Now, we're off to a turn, hoping for a clean brick. It's the 3 of diamonds. Oh my goodness. I don't know what to do anymore. I think at this stage, I'm just scared of everything. I've lost pretty much every big pot today. So could my opponent just have a full house somehow? There's also 2 flush draws in the middle. What do I do with the flopped straight? Ultimately, I decided to check, and my opponent goes into the tank as the pot is brewing. We might play one of the biggest pots of the night because he fires out $13,000. And here I am, facing a pretty big bet with about $50,000 left in my stack. What would you do in this spot? I'm sitting with the straight, but my hand is quite vulnerable. But I also just have no idea whether my opponent can have a full house here, or he could just have a draw. Or on top of that, he could also just have an overpair and be betting for value. I don't want to see a scary card to come on the river because a lot of them exist. Another board pair would be really bad for me. A heart or diamond would be horrible for me. I mean, the list goes on and on. So at this point, I think at the end of the day, I'm all in. I go all in for the $50,000 left in my stack that I borrowed. The $50,000 that's not mine, but I do have a straight. And when my opponent does not snap call, we know we are ahead. Now, when I'm all in, my opponent takes an uber long time. I mean, literally, we're fast forwarding this clip right now. This is a super long tank, and I don't know if my opponent's staring at me or not, but I'm staring straight at the board, trying to not make a single ounce of movement to either be perceived as weak or strong. I just want my opponent to make it the call, please. Honestly, at this point, when he's thinking for so long, it must be some sort of good hand. But ultimately, he just folds. And what is even more surprising is that my opponent didn't even have a pair. He was sitting with ace high, thinking for this long, for so many minutes. This is how bad my image is now. My opponent tanked for 3 minutes with just ace high for $50,000. Do people really not believe me this much? Well, it's time to find out because the $400 straddle is on and I've got a premium finally. Pocket queens on the button. I raise it up to 1,500. Action folds to the straddler. JRB makes it 5,100. And here we go. This is the moment I've been waiting for. Finally, with the premium and a good hand, I'm going to re-raise him yet again, and this time I make it $13,000, making it a little bit smaller as I'm in position, and my opponent doesn't go anywhere, making the call with about $32,000 back. And off we go to a flop of King 10-7. The overcard to my pair is horrible to see, especially in a 4-bet pot where my opponent can easily have a strong hand like ace king. Anyways, I can't check back on this board. I decided to fire a down bet of $6,000, and my opponent just folds pocket jacks face up. Man, what a bad flop to see. I show him he made a great fold with queens, but wow, if we just saw a dry board, no ace, no king, and no jack, of course, I could have won a monster pot. But hey, no complaints here, as we're finally on the right side of a cooler. And my chip stack has finally grown. I'm in the game for $110,000, guys. It's an outrageous amount for a 100-200 game. And even though the blinds are 100-200, the game is playing more like a 500-1,000 game, really. Each pot is huge. I'm profiting a few thousand every pot, and I'm finally running good where I get to scoop up chips, which really adds up over time. Which leads me to the last hand of the night. We've got ace-queen offsuit in the cutoff. The hijack limps in, and I decide to raise to 1,500. And when I talk about how big the game is, the button to my left, once again, who's been owning me all day, 3-bets me to $6,000. This is a $6,000 raise in a 100-200 game. It's massive. And ace-queen just has to be in there. I'm a little bit nervous at this point now because I've finally chipped up to a point where I'm actually in the black, but I'm going to call for $6,000 total. Ace-queen's good enough of a hand to at least see a flop. And it comes King 10-8. Now, don't have a pair here, but I do have a straight draw. So I check to my opponent, and he fires out a larger bet of 5,500. Oh, 5,500 is a large price to pay. And with no pair, even though I do have a straight draw, it just seems too big for me to call. Also, pretty nervous at this point because I'm finally up on the night. But I'm going to let my cards go and fold, which feels like a really good decision because my opponent announced he had a really big hand here. And I'm just glad I got away, quote unquote, cheaply for $6,000. The game has gotten crazy, a little bit too crazy for my blood, so I decided to rack up and call it a night. It's been a long time. I walked away as a winner. Not a huge winner, but let's go over the numbers whenever I get these into non-chip denomination. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I just walked away a winner. That is actually unbelievable how down bad I was when I went and borrowed money from Brian Oaken, the host. Shout out to him for giving me money. Oh my God, what a sun run for the last 2 hours after that. I didn't play for very long, but in the game for 110,000, leaving with the profit for 115,585. Not a huge win given the size of the game. It was massive, but my goodness, to walk out of the profit is insane. Couldn't be more happy, couldn't be more stoked about it. So if you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. More cash game videos to come potentially because we're winning. It feels so good to finally win again, and we're back, baby.